Welcome to the Beauty Business Strategies Podcast, where we give salon, spa, and med spa owners quick tips to make more money, inspire your team, and create world-class client experiences.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to the Beauty Business Strategies Podcast. Once again, my name is Michael Yost, and I'm going to be hanging out with you today along with another great guest. And today we are joined by Marian Sang. How are you, Marian?
I'm well, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Excited about our conversation today, as I always do. Before we get into it, for those that might not be familiar, just a brief introduction about yourself, where you're located, your business. Just give us a little overview, and before we get into it, so people know who's on the other side.
Okay, well, I'm Marian Sang. As Michael said, I own Omagi Salon Spa in Louisville, Kentucky. And we have been team-based for, since January of 2008.
Wow.
So,
Nice.
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So a lot of years. That's a good thing. A lot of years. And we're going to tap into a lot of that experience today, which is actually, one of the primary reasons that I really wanted to talk to Marian was because of, as she just kind of illustrated, the idea that, she's been utilizing, the strategies, systems and business model now since 2008, having great success with it. She's got a tremendous company as just overall. But I don't want to get myself distracted because we could talk about all the great things that you do and have accomplished. And we could spend a lot of time with that. What I really want to focus on, though, is because it's such a big conversation. It always seems to be. But I feel like, again, now it's trended even more than ever, is I want to talk about hiring. I want to talk about the idea of hiring and not necessarily recruiting, but I'm sure some of that will kind of come into the dialogue. But I really want to focus on the idea of hiring and hiring in a sense. What I'm going to say is one part of me just wanted to say, talk about hiring the right way. But more than that, it's not necessarily the one way is right or one way is wrong. I want you to be able to share, because in our conversations, it's so powerful, what your process is for hiring, that maybe some listening could say, you know what, I can really glean some real gems out of this, or really look at my process itself overall. So let's start with this. So let's kind of set the table with this. When you think about hiring, what do you see as, like, overall, what's your thought process when it comes to hiring? We're talking about, like, big picture. Where's your mind when you're thinking about hiring?
Well, Michael, it has changed, I will say, over the course of the last couple of years, because I guess, post-COVID, I found it was really hard to hire. I found it was hard to find people that wanted to work. At least that's what I thought. Okay. But I had to change my mindset because I took a real hard look at what we were doing on social media, which was nothing, to be quite honest. Um, and even the website didn't speak much about us, and we looked boring. I have a careers page, but it's really, really boring. And that's on our website. It truly is. It's a bullet point. This is what we offer. This is what we're looking for, right? But nothing about it was appealing or sexy, if you want to say. When I say sexy, it just didn't say anything about us. So, um, what I did was I took a class from Steph Fox on hiring and recruitment, and it was like an eye opener for us, at least. So it wasn't that, yes, we were having a hard time finding people to work, but it was how we were doing it, because everything has changed since COVID. So we had to sound like the fun, awesome people that we are, because we are, but we weren't putting any of that out there. So I'll give you an example. In August is when I put out uh, an Indeed and Home Base. We're also on Home Base, right? So we put out an ad for a guest care associate, and that read something like, if I don't remember exactly, but basically we're a fun, hilarious, foodie family, and we like to laugh and have fun and make the day of our clients. And I ended it with something like, so if you're interested in joining us, uh, let's go grab a Starbucks and chat. And we had over 400 applicants on both of those, those two platforms together. It was a bit overwhelming, and they started popping in. I mean, within minutes, within 5 or 6 minutes, I called I was in the office, but I called my guest care manager back. I'm like, we already have 7 applications, and it's only been a handful of minutes, and it just kept coming. So,
Awesome.
yeah, so, we in the past, I mean, I've been doing this for 39 years, never thought of putting it out there how we really are,
Right.
you know, but when you put that out there, then you will attract people that speaks to. And so then it's, I guess it's a little bit like online dating or courtship. You've got to you
I
have
love
to
it.
dangle a carrot like, hey, this is who we are. So, and you have to be authentic because that is who we are.
Right. So you bring up a couple things, and I want to actually, for people listening, I want to give a little bit of perspective on this. So you mentioned the fact that we'll talk about the actual what you put out there here in a second, but I want to get through a couple fact pieces. So you said that, hey, man, we received like 400, maybe 400 plus applicants off of one ad, which is like a little bit crazy when you think about it. I'm sure everyone is wondering, just for clarity, where are you located?
We're in Louisville, Kentucky,
All right.
and we're
So how big
in a
is
premier
Louisville as far
shopping
as
center.
population goes?
Oh, well, good question. Well over 1 million, I'm sure.
Okay. All right. So, giving some perspective around size, we're talking about an area that is larger, but still, when you look at that and you go, hey, listen, again, when we think about Louisville, larger city like that, big city like that, you're talking about something that your reach tends to be in your area regardless. So again,
Yes.
we still have a good population that would say with that kind of size of a city, certainly, but we're still talking about 400 in that scale. You could scale that just to say, I guarantee you, here's the win out of it. I just want to give people some perspective of that might have said, well, I wonder where she's located or that kind of thing. So it gives you a little bit of scale and perspective. But that being said, the win about it, let me ask one more question before I dive in
hmm
farther. Typically, when you put out ads in the past, what's your typical draw? Do you get then like 40 maybe if
Oh,
you're lucky,
I
or
mean, yes,
less?
it's like it's sometimes less. Sometimes it was like crickets, and I didn't know what I was doing wrong. And then I realized we just weren't being authentic in who we were. We just had this real stiff kind of feel to the job post
Right.
because
Right.
didn't sound fun.
Right. So I love the fact that, here's the win, the takeaway, first takeaway from this conversation for everyone is when she just said it, I think the perfect word, when you become something that's authentic, that's what resonates to people. Like, so I love how you even kind of made it a point to say, ending that with the idea of not come in for an interview, not drop off your resume. Hey, let's meet for a cup of coffee at Starbucks. It shows the personality of who you are. It represents, people get a sense of you. And so I think that's really important for everyone listening to understand is make sure that when you're putting information out there, if you're struggling with hiring and finding candidates, make sure that, I always kind of describe that it's like fishing. Make sure that the bait you put in the water is the bait that fish want to bite on, right? That it's something that
That's
looks
right.
appealing. And so making this something that represents who you are is appealing to people because it resonates as authentic to who you are, and people can see themselves there. This is something that goes back to the idea, and you're going to hear this a lot through the conversation, is as Marian and I've had kind of some pre-conversation before this podcast. A lot of the discussion is a lot about kept coming back to this idea of authenticity, kept coming back to this idea that people want to belong somewhere. And so I think
hmm
it's really important to illustrate. So I'm glad you brought that up, is that starting format. And I love the fact. So let me ask this question, because you said it, and I want to just follow up. I don't know if things have changed or not. You mentioned your career page on your website was really kind of boring and drab.
Yeah. Yes.
Has that since changed then to at least reflect more of this new, like, man, we got to make it look like us, not like just like the standardized text?
Right. Well, I'll be completely transparent. No, it hasn't. But because you know what, the younger people don't really look at the web page, but our Instagram has.
Ah,
So
there you
on
go.
our Instagram, if you go on there, you'll actually see a posting on Instagram that we did a couple of weeks ago, maybe, about, if you're looking for a fun, place. And and we also did, to show our funny side, you just have to go and see. It was somewhere in October near Halloween. And so you'll see them and they're going, "Hi, hi." And then all of a sudden you'll see at the end how it ends, and it's freaking hilarious because that's who we are. So
Right.
you just
I
have to
love
go
it.
look at
All
it.
right.
Yeah.
So because you're putting it out there, and I know what people are already doing, they're on their phones right now. They're going to Instagram. What's your Instagram for your business?
Omagi Salon Spa.
Okay. Omagi Salon Spa.
Mhm.
OMAGI
AGI. Uh-huh.
Salon Spa. Just run together.
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
So
Run together.
Omagi Salon Spa. Check them out on Instagram. And have fun with it, right? So I
Yes. Have fun
love the
with it.
fact. So again, we got to show a sense of us. But here's the part that I think here's the part I really want to kind of dive a little bit deeper into. You mentioned the authenticity. We mentioned the fact that again, everyone wants to feel like there's a place and that they belong. Um,
Hmm.
let's expand it then. All right, so starts with the idea that we've changed up how we've tried to put that again, put that line in the water to try and catch the right fish by saying, hey, let's
Right.
represent who we are in a greater way. What happens after that then? What's the next step? So say, for example, in the end, how many people did you invite to Starbucks out of the 400? But what happens next?
Well, so this was a guest care posting. So I have a guest care manager. So she went through them because I don't have time to do that. But and she does she chooses candidates that she thinks would be a good fit. Then I go through their resume as well, and then we'll decide together. And then she reaches out to them first, and she'll meet with them first. Okay. And then after she meets with them, and she's like, "Yeah, I think she'll be a good fit." Then I meet with them, and then we walk over to Starbucks. We have a Starbucks right next to us. So we walk over to Starbucks. We have and then I speak to them. She spoke to them on their resume, and then I dig a little bit deeper. So on the resume, just typically, and this is a favorite question of mine because they'll list jobs, but they don't list some of them. So I'll ask them about, the jobs, and I like to ask them what was their favorite part about that job and what was their least favorite part about that job. It gives me a sense of who they are, what they like. And I also like to ask them what kind of management style do they prefer? Because I want to be able to communicate well with them, right? And all the other managers. So, but one of my favorite questions is, I ask, "Are there any jobs that are not listed on your resume?" And always, because we've gotten to know each other, and almost always they'll say, "Well, yes, there's this job," and so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then the other thing I like to do is, I have questions from a that I have from a book that I read that I love, called "Hungry, Humble, and Smart." And that is Patrick, what is it? Lencioni, I believe, is the author of that. And it is my Bible. So I have those questions, and they are some great open ended questions that create a lot of dialogue. And we have fun with it. Like one of the questions is, "What was one of your most embarrassing things at work? And how did you handle it?" Because I want to know, that question kind of lets me know, if they're humble, and they can talk about something that they did, a blunder or whatever that happened to them. But before they answer, because they look kind of surprised, I tell them my biggest, faux pas at work. And then they laugh because it is kind of funny and embarrassing at the same time. So so we go from there.
I love it. So I love the idea. Just to repeat, because some people will be like, wait, what was the name of the book again? It was called Hungry, Humble, Smart. And
Yes.
so check it out. Like I said, I'm sure if you just put in Hungry, Humble, Smart book, you'll find
Yeah,
it
it'll come out.
all kind of places. And, so check that out. Again, always great to have great resources. Always great to have great
Yes.
resources. So there's one that Marian loves to use. And here's what, to me, here's the things that stood out, about what you just shared is I love how you asked that question about like, is there any job listings you didn't put down on here? And what's the reason? I mean, I'm just curious on this. What's the reason most cite for not listing something?
Well, because they weren't there for that long. And so, I look for longevity on resumes. If someone has a resume where they spent 3 months here and then jumped to the next one and 3 months there, but I look at the dates, because I'll ask them, of course, specific dates, because sometimes they'll just put like in 2020. And I'm like, okay, well, how long in 2020? So it gives me an idea. And then, there's always many times, not always, I'll put it that way. There's a gap in employment history. So that's when I know there's a job that they didn't list. So maybe they didn't leave under the best circumstances, and they'll come out and tell us, because there's something about sharing a Starbucks with someone. And I really think, Starbucks is so darn good. And I think it's spiked with something, because we go back for it and we pay a fortune and it makes us feel good, but they'll share. So I've had people really share, like, I really didn't like the manager. I didn't put that down. And because I've become honest with them, they become honest with me, and they'll say, I didn't leave in the best way. I'm like, well, that's all right. I won't, it's fine. That happens. And we just keep moving on, because I'm really looking for the authentic person. And the questions that I put together after reading Hungry, Humble, and Smart really helped me with those questions.
Love it. Love it. And I think that's the key is this, again, keeps centering around the idea of how are we creating authenticity? And you're doing that, in a very specific way, from the standpoint of the questions that you're asking, come from the point of, again, just genuine and reflects, who you are and things that, in that realm. And again, I love the idea of you're also then you mentioned, there are key characteristics that you're also starting to look for and seek out. Like I
Yes.
want to know, is this someone that's humble? Is this someone that had,
Yes.
so you're looking for maybe some key characteristics, and asking the right questions allows you to do that. Do you have, I mean, off the top of your head, I'm putting you really on the spot with this one, but
Okay.
are there any questions that you just love to ask? And again, it doesn't have to be specifically related to like the humble aspect or anything like that. But are there
Right.
any, like you mentioned the fact, like, hey, is there anything on this resume, any jobs that you didn't list? Now, there's a question that you love to specifically ask that gleans more info, that creates more dialogue. Are there any
Right.
other questions you find, man, I just find a gold mine when I ask this one or this one? Anything pop into your brain?
Yes. Yes. And that is, what is something that your best friend would say that you need to work on?
All right.
Because they're very authentic when they respond, and I look for them being comfortable in acknowledging something real, right? And that one always gets them. They're like, "Wow, that's a tough one." They have to think a minute, and then you can just see it comes over, because at this point, they're just going to be real about it, because I've asked them what their best friends think that they need to work on. And it's amazing, because even in an interview like that, and I remember one young lady said, "Well, I need to be on time." So I was like, "Okay." So then I knew, for me, I was like, "Well," but I appreciate it, and I told her I really appreciate, the honesty in that. And and yeah, and another favorite one of mine is, what's the hardest thing that you've ever worked on? Anything in your life, and was there someone better at you at something that's really important to you? Because then at that point, I'm going to see, I assess their level of humility or humbleness, because I want them, this gives me a good idea if they're a team player, because they're going to acknowledge someone else that was better than them. And if they can't do that, or if they don't do that, it's not that I won't hire them, but then I know what I'm working with,
Right.
if we decide to move forward. But I really look for that. That's for me is that's a team player. If they can say, you know what, when I was in hair school, we had this competition and I wanted to win it so badly, but another girl did and she deserved it.
Yeah.
It just says a lot about somebody.
No, that's awesome. You get me thinking about just about just the questions that we ask on a regular basis
Mhm.
and what we can find out from those and what we can gather from those. So, I love that. I love that. Because you brought up already now, you've given us three really great ones. Is there any others? Because I don't want to stop the flow of awesome, because I think people are always looking for cool questions. If you don't have any more, that's perfectly fine. They're off the top of your head
No,
that you're
I do.
all right.
I do.
Marian,
I do.
why did that answer not surprise me? I don't know.
Well, this is because I know this happens in every salon. I know it. I've been in this industry for 39 years, and there's always at some point that someone doesn't get along with someone else in the salon, right? There's some
Right.
tension. So, the question goes something like, "Tell me about a time you didn't get along with someone at work, and and why, and how did you all resolve that conflict?" It goes further. And then I also ask them, how good are you at receiving apologies and giving them? Because
Ah,
it goes both ways.
I love that. I mean, again, it'd be fascinating to hear because you're exactly right. It's like you have to learn, at least I did. I mean, I had to learn how to receive, an apology and again, the proper, yeah. I mean, those things, those aren't just, they're not as instinctive, I think, as we believe they are.
Mhm.
Those are great questions, more great questions. So, hey, this is worth, again, the price of admission alone was worth just that last, 5 minutes just of like, hey, here's some questions to go, craft
Right.
them in a way. I think here's the key, for all of this is anytime I always, and I'm going to put it because it fits perfectly with what we're talking about, I will put a little asterisk at the end of these last few minutes to say, here's some great questions that really work well for Marian because they are phrased and represent her and feel authentic to her and the culture and what that person is experiencing around them as well. So these are great questions. My encouragement for everyone listening is, take these ideas, but make sure that they feel you, and they feel
Right.
genuine to you, and they represent what it is you're looking for. Because some of these questions are fantastic, but they might not fit what your culture, your style, the person you're looking for. It might not, you might be hiring someone that, let's put it this way, if you use all these questions and they don't work out at your place, but you loved all the answers, send them to Omagi, send them to Marian, because you probably have done a lot
Sure.
of her homework already for her. So, you've pre-qualified people that would work great at Marian's business. So make sure they work well in your business. But I love the ideas. I love the questions as far as that goes. Now, going back to just, I guess right now we're not at any place in particular with hiring. It's just I'm more intrigued to know more about the process in the bigger picture. So if I get this right,
Okay.
you start out with it, I'm going to kind of encapsulate this at least a little bit. Well, so we put out the idea, having great success of putting out a first call to action with the right ad, looking for the right people, but it's framed up in a way that represents who you are, that genuineness as you spoke about, and the great response you got to that. Once we get past that, we do go through probably some pre-screening, maybe like you mentioned with a guest care
Mhm.
person or something like that. But then they, if they pass the test there, actually, I'm going to go back. I'm interested to know, when people responded to that ad, did they
Mhm.
respond in the way that was similar to how it was asked? Like, did they give you a response that was like, they showed their authentic response? Like, you know, because you could respond, like most people, when they respond to an ad, it's like, all right, here's my resume, and just a real, in a sense, kind of a real form letter response that just looks like,
Right.
hey, I've done this, this, and this. And you can read a form letter response. But since you didn't put out a form letter application or ad, did you get
Right.
back something that responses felt genuine to the ad, or did it vary?
Yes. No, it varied. Some were just standard. They applied for it, but other people, because we can text back and forth on our platform as well, and on Indeed, and they were like, "Oh, I am so excited to learn more about your company, and you all sound like you're fun." And that's, people want to work at a fun place, you
Right.
know. And we are fun. Sometimes we forget about it and didn't think about putting it out there, but we are fun. And so, yes, we had many people that were like, and you know what, if we didn't respond immediately, they would, "Oh, just checking back if you got my resume. I'd love to meet you all." And so,
Right.
yeah, I mean, it was really incredible.
Cool. So
It
we
was
put out the right thing. We started, they go through a process that might have to go some communication, but now we're talking with you. And then we started sharing, just again, some of the things that you look for, some of the things that the ways that you're approaching this, asking the right questions, trying to show the, you know, the genuine self. Let me ask this: what things then, I'm interested to know,
Mhm.
what do you try to really make sure you communicate with them? Or actually, before I go there, is there any
Mhm.
other things that you use from an evaluation standpoint or a gathering? So we've got a lot of great questions you're trying to gather, see
Right.
more of who they are. Any other things that
Yes.
you use that help you
Yes.
determine this person? What do you got?
Yes. When after I've met with them and I feel like they're going to be a great fit, but then we come back to the salon and I have them take a pre-ready test. That's RHETI. And you can look it up, but what I use is Ready by Global Leadership Foundation. And it's a free test. It's like 37 questions and they can answer them pretty quickly. And and then you score the test right there. So they do this in the office. I give them some privacy in my office. And I said, go ahead and after you're done, I'll hit the score test because I want to trade seats so I can then talk about what their personality is. And what I mean by personality, there's no right or wrong. There's just certain things that I personally look for in the ready test. So, for an example, my number one thing, it has to be in the top three because I look at their top three personalities, and there's not a total of nine. But number two is helper, and because this is the service industry, and we are here to serve. And in the past, I have hired people that were not true helpers, in the sense that for me, it has to be in their top three. It could be whatever, there, like I said, there's nine of them. But for me, and I love the service industry, and I'm really dialed in. I'm like, well, what is it? And I love to help people. And so I need a helper, and I just need a helper.
Right.
And so that's one of the things I do. And I love, love, love that test. The other thing that I look for, Michael, um, is 9 is peacemaker, which is nice, right? I also love 7, which is the enthusiast. But what I really look for is I like the 6. That's the loyalist. They're committed. And I mean, but everyone has their own thing. So, but that is personally what I look
Right.
for.
I think that's,
Mhm.
again, great that, we're utilizing another tool in a way to help us understand, you know, um, you know, this is all part of this process of hiring, to understand from a personality side. I love the fact that you stress, hey, there's certain things you look for, but I want my top three. It's got to be helper, man, because
Mhm.
we are a customer service industry. And if we don't have that, your years of experience have shown you, for you personally, again, this isn't a blanket statement for everyone, but for
Right.
you, if helper's not there, this is going to be something. I just know from experience, their challenges are going to arise. And I just recognize the fact that I need that kind of a person. And like you've mentioned too, you mentioned loyalty, before we got on today, officially hit the record button, Marian was just sharing about how they just recently We're at right now, when this is being recorded, right at the holiday season. And so they just had their holiday party and they celebrated some anniversaries. And so they celebrated a couple people with 5-year anniversaries, a couple people with 10-year anniversaries. And she mentioned how there's even some 15s coming up next year. And so what we can see is, listen, when you start getting people that want to be a part of your company for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, what's the longest? And you might have people longer tenured than that. But right now, what's your longest tenured person in your company?
I think, holy cow, it's over 20 years. It might be close to 25.
Wow.
And she moved
So
with me from the old salon to the new salon and stayed with me through the conversion.
awesome. So you're
My
talking
one and
about,
only.
right. You're talking about people that have, couple with, one or two with maybe exceeding 20 years, but we're now have regular team members that are coming up on 10, 15-year anniversaries. And that speaks to the fact that, hey, there's that loyalty trait. And maybe in a way, we didn't have all these great tools at the beginning, but we're recognizing what we're looking for, now as you
Right.
keep evolving. So this is fantastic. So again, use your evaluation tools. And the one thing I want to share with everyone, because again, if you're on this podcast, you're part of a strategies family, many of you, and if you are, that we have an assessment tool called DISC. That's more behavior style. And I want to just kind of separate. That's more behavior style, where I can understand, once I get someone, how they're going to interact and work with people and problems and a couple key different areas. It's different than what Marian was saying. I love the DISC when it comes to, all right, now I see how you approach problems. I see how you approach people. I see how you take on different challenges, and we can learn about them that way. But I love what she shared, using a tool beforehand to get more of that personality, looking for helper, loyalty, those things. Awesome tools. Use these to better grow and lead your company. So here's where I was going to go before, and I'm glad I asked the question this way. So we talked about ways that you look from an evaluation standpoint to try and find the right match, right? Let me ask this question. What are the things that you personally feel like it's important for you to share that person understands? So now you're getting a lot of information from them, but now you want to give them information. What things do you focus on for someone that you want to make sure you share with them?
Well, what I share with them after I've given them the ready test, and I think, and if they're like a helper, like I said, in top 3, doesn't have to be the first one, then I move on to our Omagi Salon and Spa 10 core values, which we chose as a team. And we review this every 2 years because culture can change, right? So it is all about our culture. Our core values is our culture. And so just to give an example, we have on there, and I'll name them: respect. That's, both ways, positive, respectful, positive environment, honesty, learning, because that's part of our culture, because I have uh, an education budget for them every year, and they have to go to education. They have to go in order to get a raise within the year. So they have to go to 2 things, because you got to keep there is not, we are such a changing profession. So you have to be on top of it. Creativity, happiness, teamwork, because we are team based, right? So that's in there. Environmentalism, because we do recycle everything. We're part of Green Circle Salon. Dependability, because you can't come in late or decide to call in all the time, because the team and the guest needs you. Success, because we want to lift each other up. So we want to celebrate everyone's successes. And fun, we got to have fun in the salon. Got to have fun. So when I give them that and I hand it to them, it's a piece of paper. And if they're into it, then they know what our core values are before we move any further. And then if we move further, that's when I go into compensation. Because by this time, our wooing is going really great. Our courtship is good. And if you like somebody, and they know if you like, they know if they like me or the salon. And so we go a little bit further into compensation. And And Michael, I mean, this is a whole other thing, so I hope I don't blow this up. But I also explain how we're different, because we are really different because we're non-tipping. And then I go into the why. I go into the why about being team-based pay, and I go into the why of the non-tipping for
Love it.
Omagi.
Love it.
And sometimes, even if they, you know, if that's a deal breaker, then I know immediately, and we don't need to go any further. But it really hasn't been a deal breaker. It really hasn't been, because once they feel the vibe and they know the culture and they answer to an ad that laid our culture out there, they want to belong generally,
Right.
and that's what it is. Everybody wants to belong somewhere and find a home. So yeah. So once I explain it, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Perfect. Love it.
Hmm.
So, and I love the fact that you emphasize the idea of, this is when I now start to share with them, hey, here's the core things that we start to do from the values, and really set the table for them exactly, what what the expectations are. And again, mapping out for them, hey, here's how we pay and here's why. And here's
Hmm.
why we're not tipping, and here's why. And like you said, I think it's really important that we got to share the why, of course, but it gives a great, without a doubt, people are going to be done with that, not wondering what it's going to be like to work at Omagi. Like there's a
Right.
very, and I think that's the part that to me really stands out. And I hope that those listening really feel that as well, is if we went through this process, and again, at this point, we have not said you're hired yet. This is just all part of that process.
Hmm.
And so we go through this process, and I think there's a great sense of, this is a place that I'm really either on fire for, and that, again, probably Marian sitting on the other side of the table feels like she can read, like, this is someone that really is someone I would like to be a part of this company, or
Hmm.
just the opposite. You start to go, you know what? We made it this far, but this is why we ask all these questions. This is why we share all this, because now it comes down to, maybe this isn't the right fit, or maybe this doesn't feel like it's the right, the right person for the job opening and opportunity. So I love that.
Right.
Clear expectations are, I think, the key part of this. The other thing I like, and I just want to emphasize it because it's my personal platform challenge that I have. Notice, everyone, please notice that, and I don't care what your pay compensation structure is, but I will tell you this. For some reason, when people move into the team-based business model and hourly compensation, and they're utilizing this, for some reason, we feel this crazy need to talk about pay right at the beginning of everything. I want you to pay attention. This comes late in the process and program. Why? Because we're still learning about people the same way. I mean,
Hmm.
no matter when, pay should always come near the end, because that's when we're going, all right, we're going to talk about pay, because I feel as though this is someone that I want to talk about pay with, because we've
That's
passed
right.
enough. We checked enough of the boxes to go, hey, here's someone that's got potential. And so now let me go that level deeper with you and talk about this. And I would emphasize the fact that when you talk about pay, then it's the right time to talk about pay, because the person on the other end is willing to now hear and receive, because they have a real sense of your culture. And so you don't automatically start creating barriers about from pay standpoint that they're thinking about, because they heard about in the first 5 minutes of your interview. And I don't even mean this. I mean, this applies to, I don't care how you pay, even if
That's
you
true.
paid, commission, or you pay hourly or whatever, no matter what number you put out there, say, people are going to always think about that as you're trying to get them think about the other important questions that really matter.
Right.
So I
Right.
love where that comes in the process. Please, put that in the right place. Put that in the right place. So as we start to kind of wrap up our conversation today, I can't believe how fast time is flying with us. Let me ask this question. How long typically, because I think, I'm intrigued to know, and I'm sure others are as well, when you look at the interview, this whole process, how long does a typical hiring process take? Do you find it with the process that you use?
They're going to be in there. or we're going to be talking for a couple of hours. It takes some time to get to know somebody. And especially if you go to Starbucks, and I'll offer to, of course I pay for their Starbucks, and, would you like anything to eat while we're here? Because I try to keep it as informal, because if someone's relaxed, they're going to just be more authentic with you, right? And it's even been to the point where, depending on the time, I've taken them to lunch right next door. I'm like, let's go grab us. Are you hungry? Have you had lunch? No, I haven't. Well, let's go over next door. So that just creates a different environment than sitting in an office. So, and that's why I like the Starbucks too. So it could be 2 hours. It could be a little bit longer, or sometimes if they don't have the time, then I'll invite them back. But we've had enough conversation that they'll come back for, and we'll finish up, because I don't know what their time is like, and I want to be respectful of that too. So, 2, 3 hours.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
So again, we're committing the time to it. It's important to do. And at the same time, we also don't, even though it might be a couple hours in that time, we also aren't laboring this out over weeks either.
Right.
I think that's a big mistake a lot of people make, is they make their process something that takes, a week, 2 weeks, this gauntlet to get through. There's a lot. I mean, as was shared, there's a lot that goes into this process, but we take care of that and are like, hey, listen, we're going to take the time that it takes right now. And so this doesn't have to last days or weeks, but you know what? This interview, it might be 2-3 hours in length, but we're getting to where we need to be. And we're doing it in, at least in a timely fashion, where we don't have to keep extending things out. So I love that. I love that fact. As we wrap up, as we start to kind of get and wrap this great conversation up, anything that you didn't share that you're like, oh man, but there's one more thing, you know what I mean, that I just want to make sure that I put out there that I think is just, again, key as a part of the process when it comes to hiring?
I think really, and I'm going to I stated earlier, but we use the DISC program. So I did not state that earlier, but what I did say is I like to know what kind of management style they like. But what that really translates into, I need to know how they behave so I can communicate better with them. And so we use the DISC profile. So if they're on and they're signed on and we do the paperwork, the next thing that they do is they take the DISC assessment.
Love it.
So, yeah.
I love what you said. I love what you said, because you said it you said it the perfect way that everyone needs to be aware is, I need to know what their styles, how they like to be led, in a sense. I'm going to kind of paraphrase it that way, like how they like to be led, what they respond to, and seeing where their behavior styles are when it comes to, again, problems and pace of work and people and all that, which just gives you a much better idea of how I need to lead this person, which is exactly why that's such that powerful tool. But you're taking it from the right advantage, which is, and again, do you ask them specific questions maybe around that? Like, hey, do you have a style of leadership that you prefer over another? Do you ask anything like question-wise in the interview?
I do. And that is literally because when I asked them what they liked or didn't like about a certain position, it's generally about the management, right? It's almost so because they don't quit the business, they quit the whoever's running it, right?
Right.
So, and I want to know, because I don't want to do those same things. And it's usually approach, and it's because of what I realized, it's their DISC behavior. So then, the DISC gives you ways, bullet points on how they like to be, when I don't want to say spoken to, but how they like to be communicated with. So if I lead a different way, then it shuts people down, right? Depending on their DISC style. So, and then they need to know my DISC style, because they don't need to shut me down either. Although I'm pretty easygoing, but it just helps back and forth. The communication is huge. So that is huge. And then one more thing, Michael, and they love this. They love this. I have a list of questions that when I've hired them on, when it's a done deal and we've signed the paperwork, I said, I need you to fill this out, and I ask them like their favorite song, their favorite candy, their favorite non-alcoholic drink. their favorite lunch, their favorite movie, their favorite book, So I have a list of those because on their first day of employment, I like to have the last new person that started, her favorite non-alcoholic drink is a chocolate milkshake. So just before she arrived, I went we have a ice cream store right next to us, so I had a chocolate milkshake made for her. So that was her little, "Oh my god, surprise, my favorite drink." So she got to have her favorite drink on her first 15 minutes of work.
Love it. Love it. That's the way, there is, and the perfect way to wrap this up. From start to finish, what you noticed was really working hard to be authentic, make a connection, make someone feel as though that they belong, but also not just the effort to make all that happen, but asking the questions to make sure that they belong. But when you get there, and like I said, that at the end, then, have them fill out I'll just call it the favorites list, right? Answering some of those things, and then their first day of work that they encounter something on that list in some way, shape, or form. What a great way to make people feel like, yeah, you know what? Here's someone that, that cares about me, because I can guarantee you, I'm not sure that, maybe they might be able to cite one other time, and I'm being very generous when I say one other time. I would bet 99% or no other times has something like that happen to them when they've started a new job, no matter what that job is, in that way. Like I said, I'm sure I know you're the exception to that rule. And it's something, for everyone out there, hope you stayed to the end, because that was a nugget right there. It's the one thing you can do that separates you from everyone else, that doesn't, it's not this Herculean effort. It's just an attention to some detail that makes all the difference in the world. So I love this. This has been fantastic today. Marian, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been
Awesome.
a pleasure.
All right. Well, again, thank you all. We're going to wrap today up right here. I hope you guys all got something really awesome out of this, that it can help your hiring experience, just in terms of how you approach it, how you think about it. Hopefully some of those questions you can make your own. And again, find ways to connect, find ways to be authentic, find ways to make sure that people feel engaged and involved, but also make sure your hiring process also sets out clear expectations, so that when it's hired, that we start all off on the right foot. So I love it. A great conversation today with Marian, and about the great culture that they have, and about how that translates into hiring. So we look forward to talking to you again on another future podcast. But until then, have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks again for listening to the Beauty Business Strategies podcast. If you like this episode, be sure to hit follow, and please share the episode link with anyone who you think could benefit from today's content. To learn more about how strategies can help create more fun, profit, and growth potential for you, your company, and your team, we invite you to schedule a free 60-minute strategy session by clicking the direct link in the description of this episode. There you'll also find links to our wide array of coaching, seminar, and learning opportunities, all of which can be found at strategies.com.